All right, let's open up a case file that stretches across empires, mythologies, and, well, centuries. We are going deep, investigating how a celebrated Roman goddess was twisted into the leader of a terrifying spectral army. Our investigation starts right now.
Our case kicks off with this eerie description of something called the Wild Hunt. Eyewitness accounts from folklore all across Europe talk about this ghostly procession, a terrifying omen just tearing through the winter sky. But who's leading it? Well, the answer to that really depends on where and when you're asking.
So Act 1, the Huntress. Before we can even begin to understand the crime, we have to get to know the victim. Let's build a profile of our central figure before her story was so completely turned on its head.
Our subject is Diana. Now, to the Romans, she was the absolute embodiment of the untamed wilderness. She was a protector of the woods, of animals, of women. A powerful, chaste, and fiercely independent figure. You're going to want to remember this core identity. It is the foundation for everything that's about to happen.
Okay, Act 2, the Midnight Procession. This is where our case starts to get a little complicated. As Roman power started to fade, Diana's story didn't just vanish. No, it kind of merged with these older, much darker European folk traditions.
The Wild Hunt is a huge deal in medieval folklore. It's really a manifestation of this deep, pre-Christian fear of the restless dead. And these weren't just a few ghosts. We're talking about a chaotic, terrifying army of souls. And, every army needs a general.
And boom, here's our first major clue. Now, what's really interesting here is the regional split. Up north, you'd hear names like Odin or other dramatic figures as the leader. But down in the Mediterranean, the folklore pointed to a queenly figure leading this spectral train. And that figure was Diana. But why? How on earth did a goddess of the woodlands become a leader of the dead?
Act 3, Queen of Three Realms. To understand the motive, we need to dig a little deeper into Diana's jurisdiction. And it turns out her power went way beyond just the forest floor. You see, the Romans knew her as Diana Triformis, a triple goddess. She was Diana, the huntress on earth, she was Luna, the moon up in the night sky, and, this is the crucial part, she was also Hecate, a goddess who had power over the underworld and magic. This triple identity, this is the key that unlocks this entire mystery.
Her connection to Hecate made Diana a chthonic deity. Now that's a crucial term in our case file. It basically means gods and goddesses with power over the earth, and more specifically, the underworld. It meant she had a direct line to the world of the dead, to all those restless, wandering spirits.
So her leading the Wild Hunt wasn't some random job assignment, it was a totally natural extension of her divine duties. She was seen as a ruler of those souls caught between worlds, in those boundary zones between the living and the dead, the civilized and the wild.
Her role was even more specific. She wasn't just a leader, she was a psychopomp, basically a guide for souls. So in these older folktales, she wasn't necessarily this figure of terror, but more one of authority, guiding the spirits along their journey. But this perception was about to be violently and very deliberately changed.
Act 4, a goddess demonized. This brings us to the early modern period, and really the central conflict of our whole story. A new power is rising, and it doesn't see Diana as a goddess. It sees her as a threat.
As the Christian church grew its power, it started a systematic campaign to pretty much overwrite pagan beliefs. Folk traditions that were once seen as no big deal were now being looked at through this lens of heresy. And the Society of Diana, as her followers were sometimes called, was a prime target. Why? Because she represented this untamable feminine power that existed completely outside the church's control.
And this slide just perfectly illustrates the rebranding campaign. Those nocturnal journeys with the goddess of spirits? Nope, now that's the forbidden magic of the witches' Sabbath. Her followers were no longer a Society of Diana, they were Diana's witches. The entire story was twisted from a spiritual procession into a demonic conspiracy.
So the takeaway here is that this was a deliberate act of character assassination. The goal was to take a powerful, independent pagan goddess, a symbol of the wild, of feminine strength, and turn her into a figure of pure evil, a queen of witches and a leader of demons, all designed to make people afraid of something they once revered.
Act 5, an enduring winter omen, and this demonic rebranding was terrifyingly effective. It cemented the Wild Hunt in everyone's imagination as something to be absolutely feared, especially during the darkest time of the year. The myth became deeply connected to the seasons. When the nights were at their longest and the winds were howling, that was when Diana and her ghostly train were said to ride. The sound of the wind itself was believed to be her spectral army passing by.
And to actually witness the hunt? Oh, that was now considered a death sentence. It was an omen of plague, of war, or of your own demise. The hunt was now seen as this chaotic force, made up of the souls of those who died violently or too soon, and their passing brought nothing but ruin.
Through this whole process, Diana's identity became this strange paradox. I mean, some people still remembered her as a protector of nature and women, but now she was also the ruthless commander of the underworld's dark forces, a wild, untamable goddess of the night.
Act 6, The Huntress Reborn. But, stories are resilient. And in the modern era, our subject's case has been reopened. Her identity has been re-examined and, in many ways, reclaimed.
This timeline really captures the entire wild ride, from a revered Roman goddess to a folkloric spirit guide, to a demonized queen of witches, and finally to her modern reclamation as a powerful feminist icon.
Today, people in groups like neo-pagans and writers have looked right past that demonic caricature. They see in Diana a symbol of the sacred feminine, a connection to the wild, and an archetype of untamed strength and fierce independence, all the things she was at the very start of our case file.
Ultimately, the story of Diana and her hunt sticks around because it speaks to something primal within us. It's this vivid reflection of the wild, untamable parts of the natural world and, well, of our own spirits, too.
So, we're closing this case file with one last question. We'd just seen how a powerful goddess was systematically turned into a monster just to fit a new narrative. It really makes you wonder, how many of the villains in our own stories are just old gods wearing a mask someone else forced upon them?